All right, guys, we got an emergency update. The new fall roster set date for the 2025-2026 season has been announced. Now, we're going to go over the date, what that means for baseball, what that means for recruiting. Also, what are some future consequences that could be downstream from this decision, why they chose this date over other dates, and as well as what are some people in the industry reacting to this and saying. We're going to cover all of that right now. So let's get right into the article, guys, of what this date is and what it's going to mean for college baseball. So, when must schools be in compliance with new roster limits? Beginning in 2025-2026 academic year for fall sports, schools must be at or below the roster limits prior to the first date of competition. That counts for championship selection in the relevant sport. So for football, your roster just has to be set before the first game, an hour before the first game, a day before the first game, but you have all the way up until that first game to make your decision. Now, for winter and spring sports, schools must be at or below the roster limits no later than December 1st or the first contest that counts for championship selection in the relevant sport. So you read that part and you think, oh, okay, it's either December 1st or before the first contest that, is involved with the championship selection. So your first game of the season in college baseball. But then you get to the parentheses, whichever is earlier. So that means this roster has to be set by December 1st of the winter, after your fall schedule inter-squads are over. Now, we're going to talk about everything that this could mean. I think you're seeing this date, one, because coaches did not want to have to set the roster early in the fall, middle of the fall, because it just didn't allow them enough, creativity and adjustability with guys getting hurt and being able to have enough guys to field a good number of inter squads. So you're seeing this because of that, but there's also some negative things that go along with this date. And so we'll go to Mike Rooney with D1 Baseball. I had hoped this was just a rumor, but here we go. 34-man baseball rosters will be declared on December 1st. Thoughts? This is materially worse than our current roster management system, and the current system has huge issues. We will be cutting massive numbers of players right before finals. Now remember, guys, in college, your finals week are typically that first and second week of December. You're usually done by December 15th or 16th. So it's those first couple weeks in December when you're taking finals. And since this is the new date, kids may be getting cut as they're studying and preparing for finals. So now they got to find another school while they're doing that. Mike Rooney continued, the number of players being disqualified from playing D1 baseball each spring, which is already too high, will increase significantly. I'm against mid-year transfers being eligible, but if this doesn't change, that must be strongly considered. 2 thumbs down on this. Okay. So what does this mean, guys? And we'll come back to some of this stuff, but my thoughts on this are, if this is the new transfer date, the NCAA is probably considering strongly allowing mid-year transfers to be eligible at Division I. Right now, if you transfer middle of the year, so this winter period, and you're a Division I player, you will not be eligible at another Division I school. So, if you're going to make it to where the date is kids can get cut December 1st or right up until December 1st when that roster has to be set, then you probably are going to strongly consider making mid-year transfers eligible. The problem with that, and again, downstream consequences, is all of a sudden, the guys at D1 Baseball are the best. They do a great job. They cover baseball. I mean, they just do a fantastic job. But let's say they go to a fall workout at one of the big-time programs. They got a big freshman there. And they say, man, coaches are saying he's been doing great all fall. He's really showing out. He's going to be a cog for them in the lineup this year. And that kid has no NIL money. So now there's a lot of hype around the player. And then the winter portal period comes, and he goes, you know what? I got a lot of hype. Maybe some people are reaching out to me saying, "Hey, if you go here, you'll get money." And now that kid goes in the portal and he's eligible to play, and he can get more NIL money, more scholarship money, etc. So that could be something we start seeing because of all this change and especially this date. So we'll go up here to more of what Rooney says here. Wes Clement says, "Well, I see the other side of this, Runes. In my opinion, D1 rosters are too big and have lots of players who just sit, don't get enough game time to improve their skills, and could be playing and starting somewhere else. But the glamour of saying I am on a roster at a big time school trumps actually playing baseball every day at a lesser known school. For me, smaller rosters mean better teams for all schools, including junior colleges." Now, I think, what Wes is saying here, he's got a lot that he's saying right. But we can't forget this, guys. And again, Wes is basically saying, D1 rosters are too big. Well, how big is the major league roster? It's a 40-man roster, right? And right now, D1 rosters are at 40. And usually they have a few extra guys that may get redshirted, et cetera. But if you move this to 34, again, we don't know how injuries are going to be played out. We don't know how teams are going to be able to adjust if they have 5 arms go down and all of a sudden they're at 29 guys before the season even starts. In Major League Baseball, you have a 40-man roster, right? And only, not all those guys are in the big leagues because you have your set roster amount that you can have on the big league team. And then the rest of your guys on your 40-man roster are in the minor leagues. But if a guy gets hurt, you can call up a guy from that 40-man roster. Now, if a guy gets put on, let's say the 60-day or they're out for the year, DL, well, that guy's roster spot on the 40-man is now vacant until he returns from the disabled list. And you can add another guy to the 40-man. So D-run rosters really aren't too big. It's just a matter of, if you're looking at a major league roster just in the major leagues, they look like they're too big. But when you realize the major league roster is technically 40 guys, it's the same size. And the major leagues, they have a lot more flexibility, like I said, because a guy goes down, you can go grab a guy from minor leagues. A guy gets seriously hurt for the year, you can get a guy from the minor leagues. In D1, you don't have that. You don't have that ability. And so now for the rosters being set at 34, sure, it's going to make other divisions and levels more competitive. But again, until we know for sure with some of this stuff coming out, and one of the funny things, and we'll go back down here, is this says the best thing is this thing at this note at the bottom: additional requirements related to roster limits. Example, whether a particular student athlete must be included on a team's roster are being developed. So it's like, hey, to be continued. Here's one little nugget of what's it gonna be like here in a year, but we're not ready for everything. And like I told you guys, it's probably going to be March or April when we find all this stuff out. Hopefully sooner, but that's probably not the case. So this is Rooney's response to Wes Clements. I'm in favor of roster limits, just not on December 1st. Here's how this plays out, in my opinion. Program has 47 players in the fall, which maybe guys bring in that many guys, but it's going to be tough. And again, players, don't blame a coach if you made the decision to go to a program that was bringing in 47, 50 guys after these rules are changed. They're going to have to cut down to 34. So just don't, if you're making a decision and you're looking at a recruiting class and it's like 15, 16, 20 guys, might want to go somewhere else. But 13 are cut on December 1st to get down to 34-man roster. Those 13 players are then ineligible to play D1 baseball that spring, not to mention the stress of taking finals and finding a new home. Yeah. And again, this didn't used to be an issue. I mean, you didn't see this many guys getting cut in the spring or in the fall winter period. Certainly every program was cutting a few, but the reality that, the amount of guys we've seen be told you got to go in the portal, this or that, this is like never before. I don't expect that to be the case next winter period, because remember, there are a lot of teams right now are adjusting to all this stuff that's gone on, all these rule updates, everything. Next year with the 26 class, they're not going to bring in hopefully and probably and generally speaking, class size on average will be lower in the 26 class. And so you're not going to have as many guys that you need to cut in the fall, depending on how many portal guys you bring in. We'll have to wait and see, but I just don't see it playing out where every school is bringing in like 50 guys and just cutting a bunch. But we'll see. Maybe they do. So this is him continued, and I think Mike's really spot on with a lot of this stuff. The maddening part of this December 1st roster declaration date is that there is a better answer sitting right in front of us. 38 to 40 man roster, that's my preferred range, which I agree with. I think like we want teams to have depth, right? We don't want to get into a situation where at the end of the year a team is playing with 25, 24 guys because that's just what's going on. That doesn't mean that's not possible, but in college, again, guys, remember, like, this isn't the big leagues. You aren't seeing like a bunch of 2-1, 3-1, 4-5-4 games in college baseball. I mean, these are like 12-11 games, 13-8 games. Every once in a while, you'll see a low-scoring game, but the vast majority of games are at least scoring 7 or 8 runs. And so you need way more depth, especially in your pitching rotation and your bullpen, than you do in the professional ranks. There's just no question. With the way the ball's traveling, even the best pitchers, you put up a 3 or 4 ERA in college baseball right now, you're a really good pitcher. I mean, you're a solid NCAA arm. And again, anything below that's just elite. But 38 to 40 man roster, I agree. Declare your roster on August 15th with a small transfer window for players who get cut. So basically what Rooney's saying here, and again, August 15th means like first day you're on campus. Like you haven't even started baseball yet. You haven't even started your baseball, your individual work. And now there are going to be guys that a lot of schools now are doing that early kind of July summer semester to get freshmen acclimated. But again, you're not going to be on campus long enough for coaches. They're still going to be out recruiting when you're on campus you're working out with, the strength coach. But certainly they're not going to be able to make any evaluation of you as a player by this time. So what Rooney's saying is like the guys you recruit, the guys you bring in, like you set that roster. You develop that roster for 10 months. And then, after the season's over in the spring, if they want to go in the portal, they can. And then you can bring in more. And I like that a lot better because, again, if you're bringing in, this would really stop the over recruiting because if you got to set your roster August 15th, I mean, you're not bringing in extra guys, right? You're not going to be able to evaluate them. So how do you bring in extra guys? So I think that solves a lot of the issue. And then we got one more thought here from Ryan Copeland. Who is making these decisions? Power 4 programs will continue to bring in 50 to 60 kids during the fall. Again, I mean, and this is from Ryan Copeland, Northern Illinois University. And no, I get the sentiment. Certainly, again, not every Power 4 is bringing in 50, 60 kids during the fall, right? Are there some that do? Yes. But not every school is bringing in this many guys. And again, if you are, like, should the coach not be bringing in 60 guys? Okay. But the player's making that decision to commit, right? The player's making that decision to be one of the 60 that come in, but now have to cut even more than they do right now. How did we even get to the 34 man? Can't even inter squad without pitchers playing defense. Mid-year transfer next? What a joke. Figure it out. And again, I think he's like mid-year transfer is no thank you because he sees. I think Ryan sees what's going to happen is that you're going to see players that are getting some hype in the fall. That one of these publications comes around and says, "Man, this kid looked really good." Coaches are saying he's been doing great, and all of a sudden he pops in the portal and transfers up. But yeah, I mean the 34-man roster again. It's now. I don't know if Ryan may not have read it, but I mean, this roster doesn't have to be set until after the fall. So you certainly can bring in enough guys in the fall to effectively inter squad. But the one hurdle is it's going to be a lot harder to convince guys to walk on, right? It's going to be a lot harder to convince guys to walk on because they know, man, the roster's only 34. Like, how many guys are coming in right now? And if you say, well, there's 40 right now, you're like, I ain't coming. I ain't walking on here. So I think Ryan, he could be totally right in the sense that if players now are way more hesitant to walk on, it's going to be hard to field a roster, right? It's going to be hard to field an inter-squad roster without pitchers playing defense. It's 100% right from Ryan from Northern Illinois. And again, I think he's like mid-year transfer. Are you kidding me? But I think Rooney's right as well. I mean, but two things can be true at once, and two things can be right. Like, if you're going to make it to where people are getting cut on December 1st, they have a month to figure out where they're going to play at. And the coach told them they need to leave. The coach cut them. It's one thing if you make a decision to leave and you were not told to do so. But if the coach tells you to do so and you do it, maybe you should have some eligibility. So that way, that would be a great way to defend against guys trying to transfer up mid-year. That, well, you didn't get cut, so the rule doesn't apply to you. You wouldn't be eligible. Thought from Rooney in response to Ryan Copeland, the head coach of Northern Illinois. The 34-man roster for baseball came from schools' desire to contain costs from scholarships and revenue sharing. But what about schools who use their baseball roster to generate revenue? Another example of competing interests inherent in a 300-member body. So essentially, guys, and we've read all the rules on this channel, and we've gone over this. Like, the NCAA specifically said the 34-man roster was set not because they felt like rosters were too big or anything like that. It was specifically set because they were worried with moving to the revenue sharing system and allowing schools to give more scholarships, that the big schools that could afford it would all of a sudden just start dominating. And it's like, well, whether the roster's at 40 or 34, that's still going to happen, right? Like, if LSU goes to 34 scholarships, if Clemson, whose sources are saying are going to 34 full rides, whether it's true or not, they will be, one of the top schools in the ACC as far as how many scholarships they're going to offer. The schools that can afford it are still going to dominate the 34-man roster as far as recruiting, right? If you can offer guys more money, like, the golden number in my mind is you get to 17 scholarships. If you can get to 17 scholarships, at minimum, you can give everyone on your team a 50% scholarship. So, I mean, that's I think what a lot of people are going to try to get to. Maybe certainly not in this first year, but over the next couple years, if you can just get to that. But I think these are great points by Mike Rooney. And remember, again, guys, like, the big question mark is this: are you still going to be able to attract walk-ons to your program now? Because you have that fall to give them an opportunity to make the team. You have a full fall now. We thought that maybe the roster date was going to be middle of the fall or beginning of the fall. With the 34-man roster, I mean, that just made no sense. And so now, with it being December 1st, you have a full fall to evaluate guys that are going to walk onto your campus. But how do you attract those guys with the rosters being 6 people less, or 6 roster spots less? And now with higher scholarship money, it's even worse to be a guy that's not walking on with any kind of money that's invested in you. So the question is, okay, they can bring in more guys, but how many are you going to actually be able to attract now? How many are you going to be able to? And again, what we still don't know, guys, questions that still need to be answered. If you have a lot of injuries, how do you fill up that roster? Are you just done? Like, let's say you have a terrible fall and 8 guys get hurt and you're down to 26 guys on your roster. Are you just kind of like, is the NCAA just like, hey, good luck, 26 guys, hope no more get hurt? Hope you have enough pitchers to play on the weekend and a midweek. And you certainly don't. Hopefully you don't go deep in the NCAA tournament or in a regional game 5 or the ACC championship after 4 or 5 games. So a lot of unanswered questions, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments about this right now, what you think about the ruling date, what the effects are going to be, if you agree with me on certain points or not. Let me know in the comments. Remember, guys, if you're if you're interested in getting recruiting, go to this QR code, scan it, fill it out. We'll meet with you, talk about what we can do and if it's a fit. Appreciate all the support, guys, and we'll be back